All right, we're live. What is going on, Modern Relics? I'm Angel. He's
We're
Lucky.
back.
We're back.
We are. We're back. Yeah.
What's good in the hood, man?
It's been a fairly uneventful week. Haven't really done a ton.
Yeah.
I've just been working and doing a lot of stuff locally, politically, stuff like that. We're been talking to different candidates and such that are going to be running in local elections in November. So we've been kind of preoccupied with a lot of that kind of stuff. But outside of that, just kind of cruising along, playing with the smoker. Smoked some chicken legs last night.
Nice.
So it was really good. And then I put them on the flat top and grilled them on top to give them a good crisp.
Yeah.
Chef's kiss. It was great. So, but yeah, how about you? What's your life been like this week?
So I've been dabbling with some new hot sauces from the show The Hot Ones. They have a company called Heatonist that makes their hot sauces, and I thought, well, this will
curious about those.
Yeah, I was like, this will certainly be a gimmick. It's not. They're delicious, all of them. Like, I got 2 low heat ones and 2 like medium heat ones, and they're unbelievable. I made like 1 million chicken legs, and then I ate them all over the course of like 3 days, and they're great. Where did you find me last week? Last week we went from annoying to furious, and then this week we went from furious to ultimate sadness. So I'll start by announcing that I used to own an Aprilia Tuono. It is now property of the people that are repairing it because the parts they need and didn't order and then tore my bike apart are now hopefully being manufactured and then shipped from Italy. So
I'm sorry?
No one seems to have them, and one place in Wyoming has them, and they're not sure they want to sell them to this shop so they can get me back on the road because they don't know plus minus tariffs if they're going to get charged an extra $2 or $3 to order new ones. So they're putting it on the onus on the shop that has my bike, which rightfully so. They should have ordered parts and then tentatively scheduled me and then said, hey, if we don't or can't get parts or there's a problem, we'll call you and cancel that, and then we'll rebook it once we have the parts we need. And I was like, well, how long is this going to take? Because the inconvenience factor is already a month long since I made this appointment in March, and I have to leave the state here pretty soon, and I don't want you to be in possession of my bike for the rest of eternity. So like, what are you going to do, comma, can you cannibalize one of the existing showroom bikes that you have and give me the fucking parts off the suspension on one of those? Well, we might have to. I don't know. This, that, and the other thing. We're going to call 2 more shops. We have calls out in a bunch of different places, but the parts are supposedly have been shipped from Italy and they're on a boat somewhere and we don't know when they're going to get here. And I'm just like, sick. I sure hope that I don't have to put up with another month or so of waiting. So anyway, doesn't sound like you can hear me at all. Are you
hearing a voice?
No.
No, I can hear you. I'm hearing...
Yeah, last week I heard an echo from whenever I talk coming through your side, so I don't know if there's you have speaker out plus headphone out turned on somewhere, but yeah. So that's where I'm at. They just have my bike now,
dude,
for like could be another month, and I'm like, there's no reason for me to get like furious and scream and yell, because it's not going to solve the fact that you have failed your customer at every layer of this transaction, and it continues to get worse. So call me with an update tomorrow morning. We're going to make a plan.
What do you do with that? Well, like, how do you...
And then we're going to have a conversation with your general manager when I get there. Yeah.
Hold on. I can't hear you now.
Oh, no. Welcome, viewers.
Are you there?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Okay, there you go. There you go. Okay.
Yeah.
Like,
I just told him, like, we're going to have a conversation with your general manager about the wild level of inconvenience that this is causing now and extreme cost, like by the day. So I don't I don't know, because it, simply put, I could go up there with my hitch carrier and say, give me my property. The problem is the forks are in a million pieces on their bench and they don't have the parts to put them back together. So like if we don't have a resolution in sight tomorrow, I'm going to flat out ask them to take one of the bikes off their showroom and cannibalize the suspension and put my bike back together again so I can go get it.
Yeah. I mean, that seems fairly reasonable. They took on the job, confirmed the date again. You were there, brought it in, and they then turned around and told you, oh, we're not going to have this done for a long time.
The problem is they didn't tell me anything along the way. I have had to call them and be like, why are we 14, 15 days in on pounding fork seals into the bottom of my forks and doing an engine oil change? Like, even that part I could have done myself, but while we're in there, like, what is going on and why did you not order the parts back in March when we made this appointment? Oh, well, yeah, I mean, they're supposed to be on order. Let me go talk. We're supposed to have the parts come in a date of yesterday, so let me go check the parts guy. I'll call you back. Then he calls me back first time later, today. It's like, yeah, they only sent us one, not the other one. And the other one's like stuck on a ship somewhere coming from Italy. So now I've called a million shops all over the country that might have this. And the answer is no. And I'm just like, well, you're going to find a solution to this pretty soon, because this has been a royal pain in the ass. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I can't imagine. I mean, this is coming off the concept of basically, taking all of the automotive luck that you've had over the course of the last couple of years. I just cannot see them not trying to rectify this, but we've seen in the past that they tend to not take accountability for anything that ever seems to be solely in their lap. Mm-hmm. And no other issue of basically, we screwed up so royally that you don't have a vehicle or whatever the case may be, and we're still not going to take the responsibility of this. This is what really angers me when I try to defend small businesses. Mm-hmm. I love small business. I'm a huge proponent for small business. But when they go above and beyond, like they take on stuff that they're not honestly capable of doing. Mm-hmm. And because they don't want to say no to money. And I get that. But there's an integrity that needs to be upheld to say, we are not in the capability of doing this particular job. So that way, when they take on a job that they can't do and cannot perform, or they cannot come through with the finished product of any kind, it makes me not have to be mad at small business. It drives me crazy when I'm like, man, I'd really love to recommend this small company, but man, they've dropped the ball so many times because their eyes were bigger than their brains. And so, yeah, man, this sucks. You spend money taking care of the things that you have, mm-hmm. and you're meticulous about it. You're not somebody who beats up your stuff and throws it at them with an impossible job and says, hey, I need a miracle done here, and then get mad at a small business for not being able to complete a miracle. Well, and this isn't
personified by the service manager that took the bike in and rolled the key over and saw that there was almost 30,000 miles, was like, holy shit, like, this thing looks brand new. I'm like, well, I try to take care of my stuff if I can, ha ha ha. But yeah, I think the major point, and it's one that I made last week, was call your customer back. Like, just let me know if there's a problem. We can try to find a way to solve it. Like, if you can't do it, he's like, well, do they offer you a chance to bring your bike back home with you? And I'm like, the nature of the job you're doing is to prevent oil from pissing all over the front of the brake caliper because it's leaking out of the forks. Like, how could I have safely got that home? I had the fork stanchions wrapped in towels when I got there. He's like, yeah, good point. I'm like, no, I just want it to work. And the problem is, you guys didn't do literally any of the legwork ahead of this job. And if I hear the word tariff, I'm going to be fuming pissed. Like, this is so,
like, we're not far enough into tariffs yet for it to impact anything.
Mm-hmm.
So, and knowing this from the vast majority of my tattoo supplies are predominantly made in China. So like, this is something that has been going around the tattoo industry of us talking about, like, well, did you learn how to make needles? Did you learn how to solder needles? And I digress, but it's a fake argument, because even the metal from the needle bars and all the needle pins also come from China. So, but if you've got 100,000 of each just sitting around, which a lot of the old school tattooers do, then you can make your own needles and solder them together and whatever the case may be. But it's still, the rest of your supplies are still going to come from China, so and all the cartridges that we have for our rotary machines now are everyone's kind of stressed about it, but I'm like, it is what it is. We'll see. We went through $45 boxes of gloves for a year and a half during COVID. I think we'll be fine, so
it's just frustrating, because like, it's a very common part, and
it is.
It shocks me that they don't have one, and AF1 doesn't seem to have one. And then the local shops that they have called within their network, someone does have one and is also possibly unwilling to sell it to this guy to get me back on the road. And like, even if the sending shop knew there was a cost increase, they could pass that along to the receiving shop and be like, you pay us the difference and reorder us the new part. Yeah, we'll overnight this one, get your guy back on the road. Yeah, so the fact that that's not happening, and that is kind of bike culture. I mean, typically speaking, when you have a flat tire or something breaks on your bike, you're stranded somewhere on a road trip. This has happened to me. And you get to a bike shop and you explain to them, and also I'm on the road 30 hours from where I live. They usually say, let's get you on the lift first. We'll put you back on the road. Everyone here is going to understand that. Let's get you patched up, and then we'll go on from there. So it seems fishy a little bit, but it's just sad now, because I have a whole bunch of stuff that's now piling up, and I have no idea what the expense is going to look like for this either, but we're going to have I'm going to have a word with them when I get up there once this is all said and done. But at this point, it could be day after tomorrow or one more month from now. Nobody knows. So, and
you are coming right into motorcycle riding season for that area. I mean, you're already in it. I mean,
like we started that season in January.
Yeah, it's a little different, but
no, it's it's so frustrating. That's all. So that's been my week, that and work and everything else. It's just que sera. So
real quick, my new business cards came in. So designed, so
it's very glossy.
But
do you guys at the tattoo shop do that thing from American Psycho where you're like, you haven't seen anything, look at this eggshell? You're like, nice.
Pretty much. Yeah. People are like, ooh, did you see his business card? Yeah. Like, there's really fun and creative ways to do it, and it's very American Psycho.
That's like, awesome.
Which is why I haven't had, this is the first personal business card I've had probably in a decade.
Yeah.
Like, I normally just use the shop card because I just, I run into an issue on a personal level where I don't know, I will get stumped and I will sit there because I'm like, all right, time to draw up a business card. And I get stumped because I'm like, I don't know what artistically represents me. Like, I could do a Star Wars card, but that seems boring and trite and like obvious, you know? But like, stylistically, I'm all over the place. So I don't really know like what style to put on my card, but also subject matter. Like really, what do I want to put on there? Because you know, I'm a religious guy, but I'm also a government guy, but I'm also a pop culture guy, and I'm also like, I have my fingers in too many pies to really narrow it down to consolidate to one image that represents me as a person, so that when people look at that card, they're like, oh, I know what he's about, you know. And
You should
I don't
have
time.
like a pie in the foreground with fingers in it, and like peeling the lid of the pie off, and all of what you just described, like coming up out of the pie.
It also has to fit on something this size and be legible too.
Yeah, just
So
shrink it down or whatever. Higher pixel count. Pixel density makes the world go round on small screens, bro. Use a mechanical pencil. They have really razor thin tips, right? You can figure it out. No?
no. I wish it worked that way. But so yeah, your bike. I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah, me too.
This sucks.
It's just like, all right, well, there's no end in sight, and here we go again. Like, it's like you realize where I'm coming from on literally everything I just
God, you
said,
gotta
right? And the guy was like,
you
yeah.
got to be so nervous now ever to take your cars or anything into any service now. You have to be like, are you sure? As you hand it over, going, I'm going to get this back, right? And
Yeah.
it's going to be better than when I brought it here, right? Because
Those are
track
the-
record rise. It's
Those are
just,
the points I preach to everybody where I'm like, they're like, you built that entire car. I'm like, everything that I could, yeah. Because every time I take it somewhere, you know, once they have the key, it's like you're on their time at their leisure, at no matter what the job is, paint, mechanical, like all of it. So yeah, I try to get it all done myself because I can't trust anyone to do a simple job correctly. You know, it's infuriating. So
yeah.
anyway, so what's up with
Anyway.
you? I mean, week thin and all that, but what's new? What's good in the hood?
Well, one of the things I wanted to touch on was the fact that we were in Boise like 2 weeks ago for Oliver's thing, but it also wrapped up the Idaho State Legislature.
Mm-hmm.
We were there for the final day, which was a Friday, and it went a little long this year because they had a whole bunch of stuff that they were trying to get through, trying to amend, and trying to kind of push back on a veto. There was a whole bunch of things that they were kind of stuck down there for. And knowing a lot of the legislators and senators, you know, they were getting pretty frustrated because, you know, they want to get back home to their families up to the northern counties. And it's hard being down there for 3 months out of the year and, you know, coming back every once in a while. But they were pretty beat up by the end of the year. But it was due to the fact that they worked really hard. And arguably, and I think it goes... I think it can be universally said across the state of Idaho that this was, bar none, the most conservative session of our legislature that we've seen in decades, if not ever. And it was pretty impressive, the work that they got done. Now, you still have your naysayers in the state who said, well, they didn't get my personal thing done all the way I wanted it to, so it was a giant failure. And we've got a bunch of those people complaining. And we're like, did you look at the list of things that happened this year? Like, you guys, we finally have a conservative...
versus the alternative,
Senate.
this is great.
Yeah, like, we finally have the majority there. Even though it's been a Republican majority, it has not been a conservative majority at all. So, you know, we are being, as a state, being sold out to, you know, big business and, you know, being piecemealed off as a state, not only our natural resources and our forest lands and our water and everything else, but also chipping away at the natural rights and the state constitution. And it has been eroding for years and years. Now, a lot of people will go, "What are you talking about? You live in Idaho. It's probably one of the most conservative states in the union," and they would be correct. However, even Idaho is not subject to that type of erosion, and we are trying to make sure that that doesn't happen, so we stay that way. But just as a quick kind of rundown, and I got to give props to my boy Matt Edwards, and he runs.
Matt.
He runs what is it? The Aaron will probably help me out in the chat, but Citizens Alliance of Idaho, I believe is what it's called, and he runs a podcast that does on a state level, and Matt's a good friend, but he put together this list and my wife reposted it, and so I really wanted to kind of go over that and kind of show people really what happened, and then kind of get your take on some of these things that we got passed, or at least, if they have not been signed by the governor at this point, most of them have. If they haven't yet, they probably will at this point. I don't see him vetoing anything else going through.
Hopefully.
So, you will not, one of the things we pass as a bill, you will not be forced to undergo medical intervention in order to study, work, or play. So now the state cannot require any business or any institution at all to require a medical intervention in order for you to do any of those things. So you don't have to have a vaccine or anything in order to pursue life, liberty, in the pursuit of happiness. You don't have to subject yourself to any type of medical procedure at all, and now it's codified within state law.
Does that also prohibit accessibility things where people might need accommodations to do their job, hearing aids and wheelchair ramps and stuff, or is it strictly defined as things like we can't force you to take a shot in order to be in a workspace kind of thing?
I think it's more the latter. So
okay, and I support
all
that.
all the other things are already protected to create ramps or hearing aids or anything like that.
Gotcha.
That's already
so
protected.
Accessibility is not manipulated. Then I'm 2 thumbs up on that one.
Yeah. You will not be debanked for believing something outside of a particular narrative. So it is illegal in the state of Idaho for you to lose your banking ability through any institution because you have wrong think. They don't like your social media posts, or they don't like your political leanings of any kind. They don't have the right to debank you. So
kind of thought the First Amendment covered that, but yep.
It should have, but I guess we got to codify it in state law in order to make it real.
Yeah, thumbs up there.
You will not be forced to share a restroom, locker room, or prison with a man if you are a female.
How is that defined?
Basically, if you were born with
so it's the gender of your birth.
The gender of your birth. It is illegal now to put the gender a male from birth into a prison with a woman, into a locker room. They are no longer allowed in locker rooms or restrooms with any women in the state of Idaho now.
Okay.
So
thumbs up.
Yep. So now, and that falls into the protected class that we push through, not allowing transgender men into transgender women into women's sports.
Okay.
So we have that was in last year's state legislature, and this is kind of an add-on to it because there have been some issues up and down the state, especially within high schools. Of shenanigans going on within restrooms and locker rooms, and on a national level, prisons. So they were like, let's just get ahead of this. We're not doing that. You will
Sad
not
that's
be
compulsory now, but it makes sense.
You will not be forced to wear a mask to participate in society. So Yeah, so that is a heavy pushback to
To
the
the
mask
entire
Nazi.
state's constituency that revolted in 2020 and 2021.
Yes.
Yeah.
So this was like, no, you don't
Yeah.
get to. There's no, and we also push back on, and I don't know if it's in here, but um, the authority that health departments that are unelected boards for each county
Yeah.
has on implementing those type of laws. Like they're not allowed to just say everyone has to wear a mask to come into any facility because they don't have the authority to do that. And
Right.
so like our Panhandle Health District where we're at really tried to heavy hand our county and got told to kick rocks real hard when the people push back and they're like, you're not elected. You don't
Right.
get to tell, you don't get to make law. You don't get to make anything.
You can't declare
You
that
get
as
to
a
make-
state of emergency because you have an MD behind your name,
Right.
basically. Yeah.
You get to make suggestions. That's what you get to make. And that's it. So, and that's, I think this was piggybacked off of that they don't have the authority to do that. So
this prevents them from doing that no matter what. And
Yes.
it's passed, it's now a state law.
Yep.
Thumbs
So, you can use some of the money promised to educate your child outside of the public school system on what works best for your family. So now we have money that follows the child. So that parents get a tax credit now that says, hey, if your kid is not within the public school, you get to use that money either towards a private school or towards homeschooling situation or any of those things. So that way you're not just paying into a school system that your children aren't using and that you have no need or want for, and it actually helps you direct the educational money specifically towards an avenue that will actually benefit your family and your kids.
I'm scared of that one.
Why is that?
Because in concept it's brilliant. In practice, how are they going to regulate that? Like, do they have to make sure you don't spend it on Pop Rocks and Ferraris? Do they get to have sightline into some shared account? Do they release the funds when you apply for them with proven documentation and receipts on what the education thing you're using the money for is to be spent on? Is it a reimbursement program? Like,
how will it not be abused? Essentially,
do they get to look in your bank account? Like, yeah, like in theory, it's awesome, and I think that's incredible. That's a really unique approach to solving a big problem. But the regulatory part of that has a very black hole bottom if it's not managed well. So that one scares me a little bit. But did they outline any of that or?
They did. Okay. I'm not familiar with it, but like my wife and a couple of other people who've actually like looked into it and went, okay, because these questions were brought up. Like, hold on, how are they going to not let this get abused? And also, is it going to give them an open door to look into your finances, stuff like that? So, and yes, those questions were asked before this bill. I mean, it was argued multiple times on the floor. So, and so, I don't know if it got if it was written really solidly to begin with. If I'm not mistaken, this bill had to go back and get amended once or twice and then come back in to kind of plug those holes to make sure, because there was even there was a lot of pushback from homeschool communities, which everyone thought the homeschool community would be super on board, but it was actually the idea of having to be accountable financially to the state that spooked them, and they're like, no, we don't want to, we won't take any of that money. We want nothing to do with it if it means it's giving them more access to our lives. And so there was some pretty heavy pushback. So I think that it did have to get amended, and I think that the amendments were so solid that they even got the support from the groups that were pushing back on it because of those things.
Follow me on this hypothetical thrill ride. So I open an LLC in Idaho State, and either that or an NPO, and I license it where I can use the child's education funds to spend on my new Ferrari. And the reason behind that charter is so that I can teach the child a trade on how to be a Ferrari mechanic. And you can't intercept any banking principles because of wrongthink. Remember that earlier bill you just put up? So like, I bet you that was amended 100 times, because that I could draft a loophole for that. That's cleaner than what I just described in 5 minutes.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So, let me get back to you on that one.
Worth checking into. I'm sure it had a lot of people, posturing.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of pushback from the public school system and the teachers, because they were like, "You're taking our money."
Yeah, thumbs up to the concept, though. I think that's a really great solution
to the concept. Yeah. Let me find out what the details are, and then I'll be able to see if those holes were plugged. So, next one. You can now sentence a child rapist to death by firing squad in the state of Idaho.
I mean, okay. Personally, thumbs up. Like, why was firing squad brought back? Like, that seems
got brought
specific in, because don't they support the chair and lethal injection in Idaho still?
They do, but last year, actually, they passed firing squad because death row was taking so long, because the chemicals are now not electric chair, just lethal injection.
Okay.
But the chemicals were taking so long to get that they actually passed firing squad. And we're not the only ones. I think South Carolina did it too, and a couple of other places. So firing squad is back on the menu, boys, and they just passed this year. That was last session. This session, they just passed this year that if you are a top notch, as in like you, like that Duncan guy who they caught red-handed molesting children, right? Yeah. If you're one of those people who are so egregious and it's so like you pled guilty and you got caught in the act, there's no ifs, ands, or buts, you now can be sentenced to death by firing squad in the state of Idaho if you are a child rapist.
I read a story today where a guy got picked up for being a molester, I think, on a overdue warrant or something like that in Montana State, and he fled there from Olympia, Washington, and then they just extradited him back to Olympia because he was picked up on an unrelated charge, because they had some concerns about an 84-year-old woman that he was the handyman of, that she disappeared. The day after she disappeared, he built a shed in her backyard. They dug up the shed and found her remains encased in the concrete he used to lay the foundation. So now he's a principal suspect in murder in addition to the kids. So it's like a foot race between Montana and Washington on who gets to prosecute this guy and for what. So there might be a number one candidate. I don't know. I don't remember the guy's name. I literally read that right before I joined the pod. But okay, so firing squad's back on the menu now. Yeah. So
it's hard.
Where I'm going is like the kids that fall in love. One's 17, one's 18. Maybe they didn't know. Like
that is not within the realm of it.
Okay, like are they going to shoot this kid? Because you know what I mean. Like I don't endorse that, and I don't know what the legal age of consent is, and like
statutory is not a part of it.
Okay,
and it has to be of egregious nature. Okay, it has to be something like.
So this is a violent or extreme crime that qualifies.
Exactly.
Okay, I got you. Okay.
Yeah. So and those are
there is precedent for that. So
right, exactly, and that's exactly what they're kind of going for is.
Gotcha.
That level of and I can't remember his first name. His last name was Duncan, the guy up here.
Yeah, I remember.
With the Grony kids and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. He would have been a prime candidate for something like this. Something like that. But your average a serial rapist of any kind is going to be probably subject to the possibility of this, but it's not going to affect the 19-year-old kid who
Sure.
made a mistake with a 17-year-old girlfriend, like, or anything of that. It's of the egregious nature of, violent sexual crime against young children.
Gotcha.
And so this is what this will apply to.
That's very interesting. Can I do a quick test real quick with you live? Just
Sure.
for fun, can you click that mute button on your mic that would be where your thumb would go if you were to grab it straight on real fast? Is it muted? And just shake your head yes or no. Muted, yeah. So it's interesting. When I talk, I no longer hear myself echoing. Go ahead and unmute that. Here we go. And it's back.
Yeah.
So I think there's some sort of feedback loop on your side you might investigate later. It's not the end of
Okay.
the world, but just as a heads up, I was trying to isolate that on my side the whole time you were talking. So anyway, go on. So firing squad, what else?
Okay, so DEI
Sure.
in higher education is now dead. It is illegal to imply or implement in any way, shape, or form diversity, equity, and inclusion curriculum or hiring practices or any philosophy there within the higher education system within the state of Idaho. It is stripped away. You're not allowed to use it, and I believe there's penalty fines and worse if it gets caught, because they recognize that they'll just change the name of stuff, keep
Yeah.
it going, and just change the name. So
Like, legal recourse is going to happen, and like with a law being put on the books of this nature, it's probably a positive step.
it'll get
Net
it'll
new.
get challenged in court.
But even the people that didn't get hired, but somebody who was more qualified than them, perhaps a person of color, or someone BIPOC or whatever, that person could then potentially sue the small business or the big business for implementing illegal DEI practices. This
isn't
it's
big
such
business.
a-
This isn't business. This is only higher education.
Well, but the business of education at the state level, right? Whatever that looks like.
Yeah.
So it sucks that this is as messy as it is today, and I'm glad that this is probably a step in the right direction because it needs to be done. The more than all that, because that's one guy's opinion. What should matter is who is governing the curriculum then to decipher whether there's DEI narratives that weave their way into the curriculum, not just the hiring practice part, but that was part of what you said, correct? Is the curriculum being
That
taught?
would be Debbie Critchfield. She
Mm-hmm.
is the Secretary of Education within the state of Idaho. So it's under her purview, and then she has basically assistants that go about and go monitor these things
It's a
within
lot
the
of
school
power, the
systems.
influence over the young minds with one office, eh?
Yeah. So, but that being said, like, it should be focused on academics and
It
not
should.
on those type of policies that basically are
They're narratives,
are-
yeah, and it's for sure.
yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah.
It's-
And so
it's just
that's-
an interesting
that's
conundrum
the-
that we're coming down to having it inspected, right? Better now than letting the Institute of whatever at the national level push these things, like by and large. But it is
Absolutely. And we cannot even deny in any way, shape, or form that the higher education system has been absolutely infiltrated and overtaken by, I would say, to be kind of base about it, not based, but base about it, because
Yeah.
there's a very heavy Marxist leaning in all higher education, and
that's
it
my
was done on
point. Like,
purpose.
that's my point.
Yeah.
Like if Debbie retires and somebody that disagrees with that law steps into place, who's the checks and balances for this new office that might allow
what's
or
funny
script in those things into the modern curriculum or the future
is
curriculum?
Debbie is not our choice for saying, like, she won her election, but she was not the conservative on the ticket. And even she is recognizing that this is an issue, and it's probably due to the enormous amount of complaint material that they get emailed and
some of that
talked
shit
about
is horrid.
Oh yeah, yeah, and
Yeah.
so yeah, having a college age daughter, and my son's going to be going to one of the local colleges here as of next year. This is something that's very much on my radar. It's on my radar about like
Yeah.
what are they going to be? My daughter decided not to go to college because she was watching all of her softball friends come back different people. And the
indoctrination.
girlfriends that
yeah.
well, yeah, and also they're just shells of who they used to be, and she watched them as she's 14 years old on a team, and having 17 and 18-year-old girls on the team go off to college, and then she's like 15 or 16, and they're coming back from college a year or two later, and they are wildly different.
Yeah.
And there's other things going on too, like they're malnourished, and they look beaten down and tired and exhausted, but due to their heavy schedules and everything, but just idealistically, personality wise, she's like, I don't even recognize them anymore. They're not even the same
that
people.
For years, like, please teach me how to think, not what to think.
Right. And so my daughter was terrified that she's like, I like me. I don't want to be anything else. I want to be this. And if I go there, I'm afraid that I'll go into these and the social pressure of those institutions will crush me to a point where I will have to submit to be accepted within these organizations and these institutions, and I just can't do that. I don't want it. And I was like, well, God bless you for that, and good for you. And
that's a real story Brett Cooper shared about her life on the Sean Ryan podcast when she went to, I think it was Southern Cal or UCLA or something like that. Exact same pressure that your daughter avoided wholesale by not going.
Yeah. No,
it's very real.
My daughter's, probably one of the most quick-witted, intelligent, good head on her shoulders, mature girls for her age. She probably would have done well academically in any institution of any practice that she decided to go and pursue. I do not have any doubts of that. And I don't think that it's fair that we were too scared to kind of push her. Like growing up, we were always pushed. My parents could never afford it, and I'm not equipped for higher education. But that was kind of the running thing, is that after high school, on a grand scale nationally, that's just what you did. You went to college afterwards, and you didn't even really have to know what you were going to get or do. You just went, and that was the point. Get that paper, get that piece of paper, and come back with it, and it'll be easier for you to get a job. Nowadays, even that incentive is gone. We've come to realize that all those people are in wild amounts of debt, and will never get out of it. And then on top of that, you don't actually learn anything. You learn how to be. You get forced into how to be. And
I thought Biden was going to forgive all that debt, though. Something like that.
Wasn't he supposed to? Yeah. I thought there were checks going out.
Yeah. Anyway.
So, but yeah, so that being said, the DEI situation is a problem, and I think this is a first step in tackling it. Now, will things have to be tightened up? Will things have to be, regulations be put in there to make sure that the next, like you said, the next sitting Secretary of Education comes in, and it's a totally different mindset, and now we have but codified into law is that DEI is no longer allowed to be legally implemented within higher education. There's probably more to that that's outside of just a bullet point that I have here, but we will see over the next, and I'm sure that the next session they'll probably add some amendments on there and kind of fine tune it, but at least getting the foot in the door was important. So, you won't find refugees and illegal aliens being granted free services that citizens don't even get access to in the state of Idaho. So we have now cut off the teat that fed a lot because of our agriculture in southern Idaho specifically. And we actually had a particular, I think she's a senator, if not a legislator, stand up who owns a dairy industry down there, actually try to defend the fact that half of her, more than half of her work staff are illegals and that they need these benefits. And they're like, first of all, it means you're not paying them well enough. Second of all, you shouldn't be paying them at all.
You're in violation of the law.
You're in violation of the law. Yeah. And so she's in hot water now because she emotionally stood up and tried to make this defense. And everyone's like, hold the phone. We need to back up and actually talk to you.
Let's unpack what you just said in front of a bunch of people, lawmakers. Yeah.
So, that is now illegal for anybody who is not a citizen of the United States to actually get free services within the state of Idaho.
No complaints here.
The World Health Organization has no power here now. We've kicked them out. So the WHO doesn't have a room to rent within the state of Idaho anymore. So anything that comes down, even through them, down the pike through any medical industry or governmental industry, whether it be on a federal level or otherwise, stops at our border. They do not get to implement any type of protocols within our borders.
Yeah.
Plain and simple. They do not have an authority. We do not listen to them. World Health Organization is basically
what it should be, a pamphlet.
Yeah. So, health districts must be public health recommendations, must base public health recommendations on science and are not permitted to do all things. So, that this goes into the masking and the panhandle health thing, where they basically aren't allowed to just say 6 feet,
right?
Because we made it up, or double mask because one mask doesn't seem to be working.
Right.
Whatever made up nonsense, they're just not allowed to permit to do whatever they want. It has to be based
their slogan
in
for
medical.
that protection back then was eerily based off of a spearmint gum commercial from the 90s. So
yeah. So basically, it's like handcuffing them to science. They have to be based in what is in medical journals.
Is it science or the science?
And that's what this defines, is that it's not the science.
Sure.
It is literally what, like my wife would bring the binders of the real science, their medical journals to them and go, you guys are in opposition and violation to what is in your own journals by what you're doing with all of these things. Explain that to us. How are you saying that this is reality when this book, which is yours, says the opposite? So can we get, and so that's what this does, is it kind of chains them to actually not being able to just kind of make stuff up as they go.
Sure.
So civics and cursive writing must be taught in K through 12.
Okay. Civics, yes. Cursive writing, cool. I thought it was slowly going the way of Latin. So
yeah,
no, I think we've had that conversation before, right? Like somebody stopped me and was like, "What is that?" I'm like, "Cursive." I'm like, huh?
Yeah. And that's the problem, is that all these kids can't read a signature. They can't read.
Principally, I don't write in cursive either. Right. But I know how.
Right. But they also can't read our founding documents.
Yeah.
And that's a big problem. And so that kind of lends into the civics thing. They don't even know what our founding documents are.
And alternatively,
because they're not being taught.
You could tell them, if they want to be a lawyer without going to law school and other vocations of that sort, go to Washington.
That's right. No bar necessary.
You could just have those things over there.
I had a conversation with a guy the other day who was talking, and yeah, I was talking to a guy the the other day, and he was talking about how he used to be like he was gonna be a lawyer, and I was like, well, you still can over in Washington now. Just go over there. You're a lawyer now.
Right. Like waving a magic wand.
Just so you're aware. Yeah. Let's see. Fetal development courses based on actual science must be taught in schools. So now, like within the the appropriate grade levels, whether it be middle school on or whatever the case may be, the science of how fetal development actually happens within health courses has to be taught, because it's not right now. So they don't teach anything about the embryo, the conception, the embryo, and fetal development all the way to birth. They just don't do it, which dehumanizes it, which disconnects them from the idea that that is actually a person and not just a zygote, not just a clump of cells or whatever the case may be. And this actually puts it back into the perspective of the science of this is a human life. And so it is now fetal development courses based on actual science must be taught in school. So no religious aspect to it, just based on the fetal development. So free speech is protected in college campuses now. So they
Let's go.
really hammered down on that one. So you can say whatever you want on a college campus, and as long as it falls within law. So you can't threaten people. You can't, do the
But you
calls to
can't get
violence,
drawn
that
up
kind
on
of stuff.
charges for calling a woman yes ma'am and she gets offended and it's hate speech suddenly and all that stuff that we've been seeing throughout the country over the last few years. Yeah, that's net positive. Yeah.
Yep. And this one is a big one because it's actually, there's a story behind it right now. Flying divisive flags is not allowed on government property or in schools. So now only the Idaho state flag and the American flag are allowed to be, or kind of generalized flags, stuff like firefighters flags or whatever the case may be, benign kind of.
You can't have a pride flag and you can't have a cross flag. Like everything else is just
exactly. Yeah. Now the problem is that Boise City Hall, run by Mayor McLean, they have already given the bird. They're like, no, we're never taking it down, and they have left it up in violation of the law. However, there's the one thing about this particular law is that they did not put any anything in the law to what's the term I'm looking for? Like a punishment, like there's
no penalty.
There's no penalty. So it just says it's not allowed. It doesn't say that there's any penalty revision in it.
Should
at
open
all.
them up
There's
to a
nothing
lawsuit, though, shouldn't it?
It will. And what will end up happening is next session, they'll definitely modify that for sure. And then probably go back retro on it and actually fine her and the city for the entirety of that year of her not taking it down when she was supposed to. And it depends on how much she thumbs her nose at the situation. Those stipulations could get worse for her, but who knows? Because if in fact the attorney general gets involved and ends up having to kind of put the slap down on her and she pushes back and it goes to court, there's going to be a lot more fines. The problem is, and it's not necessarily a problem, if the city of Boise and Mayor McLean get sued for this, who pays for it when they get sued?
You all do.
The taxpayer.
Yeah.
Right, the taxpayers. But man, does that piss off people when our state-run or city-run or local government wastes our money on frivolous lawsuits based off of laws that they were breaking.
Yeah.
So it will actually probably harm her even more, the fact that they're going to use our money for that lawsuit that she could have avoided and should have avoided and is breaking the law. So
I would imagine if
it's-
she's in for a penny, she's in for a pound and wouldn't give a shit either way.
100%.
Yeah.
So, but it's going to also cost her come election time.
Well, the best
So-
part would be if her entire staff collectively decides that they don't want to stand in violation of the law and make her go out and put that flag up herself every morning or whatever. But
And we're talking about Boise City Hall, and most of them are handpicked
acolytes.
for those jobs. Right. They're
Yeah.
all acolytes. They're not going to get anybody who's in opposition. So
Sad.
okay, so we have a slap law that just got passed. So judges can throw out frivolous lawsuits before they even get started. So this is to basically give them the authority to say this lawsuit is BS because it's just two people sniping at each other on the internet, which are called slap lawsuits. So they've become so rampant within the state of Idaho that there's no standing for any of them, but they're forced to go through the legal system.
Yep.
And people could just throw them on them. Like, I just don't like this guy and he said a mean thing about me, so here we go. And then it gets drug out, and what they do is they use it as lawfare to basically drain the resources of different groups. Like, this group is in opposition to something that we're trying to push through, so we're going to create a slap lawsuit and keep them tied up in the courts, and then also drain their resources.
Yeah. And it's great
so
press for your cause. Yeah.
Right. So they now have the authority to go, this is, you guys are griping, and throw it out. So you won't find people living in tents on the sidewalk or in city parks in the state of Idaho anymore. It is illegal to set up homeless camps.
Wow.
So
You
Yep.
guys are going to need to hire a lot more police. I
Well,
mean,
we
just
don't-
based on all the laws so far.
Right. Yeah. And this is just kind of the bullet point. There was a lot more. I think 167 went through this year. So something like that. I could be wrong. If Erin wants to correct me in the chat, she can do that. Let's see. And
Yeah,
soon
we had like 200 last year, and I had to go through all of those too, and it was mind numbing. But yeah,
yeah. And actually, it's not soon. This is actually now passed and been signed by the governor. You will be able to, you can now buy ivermectin over the counter
oh, that was outlawed
So-
before in Idaho.
everywhere.
Didn't know
So
that.
like, and it wasn't prior to 2020. And then all of a sudden, during 2020, they made it so that you had to get a prescription for it. And which is why people were going to veterinarian
Yep.
places to get their horse paste, right? But now you can just get the regular human kind, which is a miracle drug that has been on the market for 85 years and won a Nobel Peace Prize. And literally, and I'm not exaggerating, like 3 billion people have used it over the course of time. And it was given out free so that you wouldn't get respiratory and like respiratory diseases in South America and Africa.
Mhm.
And so it's a wonderful drug, and so they have now made it available over the counter in the state of Idaho. So pharmacies can no longer control, or doctors can't control who can and cannot get ivermectin, because it's as safe as aspirin, but has incredible medicinal qualities to it. So
Yeah, I've done some studying. Well, that's good. They reverted that then.
yeah.
That's interesting. It
And-
had to be a law, but I suppose it would need to be if there was a federal. Well, not really. If it was a mandate, it doesn't mean shit. Anyway, interesting. They put that into law. That's net good.
Yep. And that's it for my list.
Wow.
And that was just this session alone. And so
That's a lot.
we also passed a medical freedom bill that just got passed. So, health freedom bill that I'm not really sure exactly what it did, but that just got passed too. So that can be added to this list too. So,
That's a lot.
but
That's a lot going on.
that's a lot. Yeah. And that's just like the tip of the iceberg. And so that was a huge year for our state legislature, whether you're on one side or the other. And it really kind of pushed the boundaries and set precedent that I think that's what their goal was this year, was not only to kind of build kind of a wall of, you know, safety around the people of Idaho and kind of build that, but also
make Oregon pay for it.
Yeah, right. But no, also to kind of show, like, because we often take, you know, hey, look what Tennessee or Kentucky is doing, or
Right.
you know, and see bills and laws and kind of borrow them and try to implement them. You know, like a lot of people, when, you know, we went constitutional carry, I think we were in the first like 5 or 6 states to do that,
think you were in the
and
first
now
three.
there's you know, over 20, in the realm of 25, that are now constitutional carry states since that happened. And that's what they do. State legislatures will craft a bill, really work it, make it kind of impenetrable, and shore up their state with it. And then other states will see that, and they'll go, or they'll pitch it to other states and go, hey, you're like us, do you want this bill? And you can just rework it and that'll work for your state. And so I think that's what they were kind of doing this year, was not only shoring up for us, but also creating legislation that other states can actually look to as precedent and borrow it and implement it in other like-minded states. So it's been an interesting year down at Boise. So, but yeah, that's basically the wrap up for Idaho State Legislature this year. We have ours every January, February, and March, and this one went a little bit into April this year. So, but yeah, it is finished, and all the state legislators and senators get to go home and take a nap for a little bit.
Nice.
And yeah.
I mean, an overwhelmingly positive response. Obviously, I could spot some holes on face value that probably need tinkering. I'm sure others that are much brighter than me can as well. So net good though, all in. I think that's awesome.
Yeah. I think it still has wiggle room, but I think that overall I'm very happy to keep my family here for a little while longer, at least, you know. And it's a place that I'm happy to raise my family in. So
not flee to the south somewhere where you have to hide from the persecution of your own state.
Right.
Because it's an onslaught on civil liberties and the American values.
Constant.
Yeah, I'll have to figure out where I've heard that before. All right, so I got something for you. Do you remember Skip-Its, Super Soakers, Razor Scooters?
Yeah.
Tamagotchis on the keychain, the 1990s toys. You remember those times?
I absolutely remember those times.
We lived outside. We got bruises occasionally. We drank from the garden hose. It was a different time. It was a different time. Today, outdoor fun has really gone digital. Like, we've got app-controlled drones, augmented reality games like Pokemon Go, and everyone's glued to some sort of PC or Nintendo Switch or console. So is it better or worse is sort of the debate. The 90s toys versus today. Or is it just different and I'm just being a get off my lawn old guy kind of guy? But the real question, were the 90s toys better because they left more to the imagination? Or am I just shaking my fist at the cloud of progress? Kind of want to know what you think. And also, what was your favorite 90s era toy from back then? Because I think, for my part, I feel that imagination really has gone the way of the buffalo a little bit. And more and more folks that have kids that entertain themselves in such a way that are pure digital and stuff, they lack experience in all things, particularly socially. But that's kind of how we grew up, was outside in the dirt with toys, figuring shit out all day, dreading going indoors, washing up, having dinner, and going to bed. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
and I think it's net bad where we're going. But what are your thoughts? And what's also your favorite 90s toy? Because I can't make up my mind on mine.
I would agree with you entirely. I think it is an absolute net bad where we're at today, and it isn't just a get off my lawn thing. I've raising kids
Yeah.
over the course of the last 19 years, but and just seeing kids nowadays, I see the kids that come into my shop with their parents or whatever the case may be, and you're right, they're glued to a screen. They don't like being outside for the most part. It's rare when you find a kid that is like an outdoor kid. Like you're like, wow, it's abnormal to see a child want to play outside now. Now they're completely locked into some type of digital franchise of some kind. And, there's people who are going to argue for the benefit of that, saying, well, that's what the job force will have for them in the future. So it probably is best for them to do that. And sure, if you're just raising someone to be part of the job force and not a human,
Also,
humans need dirt.
I kind of disagree with that narrative too, because you still have to interact with human beings. You know what I mean? Like,
They don't feel they're gonna have to. Like, I've been watching a
maybe they
lot of
won't.
podcasts where it's gonna be people in VR goggles and doing their jobs while sitting there waiting for their Uber Eats to show up, and eating the bugs and being in the pods, and like the human interaction is being removed. And if you talk about like conspiracies of and it's not conspiracies because it's going on in China and in England, but the smart city kind of aspect of it, where you have social credit scores that'll keep you indoors, keep you locked into those things.
well, and people that live
This
in
is-
those gaming cafes and pods is rampant in
Right.
Japan as well.
Right. So conditioning in the United States of presenting it at an early age as this is fun and development is, I think, a Trojan horse to a very, very poor health, bad attention span adult. It's going to be a very unhealthy human being later on, but it's easy for the parent. It makes half the work because this machine is doing the other work. Now, our parents weren't doing the work when they kicked us outside either. But,
Yeah, they weren't. There was no balance to that equation either.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but they also understood that being outside was healthy.
Yeah.
It was healthy for children to get fresh air, to touch the ground, to climb a tree,
Go touch
to
grass,
be,
bro.
yeah, to actually be in the outdoors is being connected to the roots of who we are as humanity. And even if you're not understanding it at 8, 9, 10 years old, it doesn't matter. You're skinning your knee, you're finding lizards, you're, collecting frogs and playing baseball until it gets dark. You're forgetting your jacket. You're, all of the fun stuff that we got to do as kids, these kids don't even understand. Most kids nowadays, if you asked collectively, I would say 85+% of them have never climbed a tree.
Mm.
And that's insane to me that you've never climbed a tree? Like,
Well, probably because if they fell out of the tree and broke their leg, their parents would sue the forest department.
right. So
Like,
the whole
I think
world's
there's
been-
some level of insulation from your and my generation that's prohibiting children from going outside to some degree. Even though
Right.
it's
Our parents-
awfully enticing to have these digital fixes and stuff, as that's the way the world seems to go. But some of the
'cause our
culpability
parents,
may...
if you broke your arm falling out of a tree, our parents would look at us and go, "What did you do?"
Right.
Nowadays, they would look at a broken arm and go, "What didn't they do to keep
Right.
this from happening to you?"
That's my point.
And
Yeah.
so, yeah. But yeah, as far as the toys go, you're right. Even the indoor toys, there was far more imagination involved. You and I come from the action figure.
Ninja Turtles and pizza vans, man, and those were indoor
Yeah.
and outdoor toys. I ruined a bunch.
Absolutely. So many GI Joes I had out in the mud, dude. Like,
Yeah.
and I'm a little bit older than you, so my era was the mid 80s, like the early 80s. Like, I can remember wanting action figures and stuff and collecting the early Star Wars toys and early Voltron stuff in 83, 84, 85, going into the 90s. But by the time, I graduated high school in 1996. So like 93 through 96 was pretty much, I was kind of getting into more girls, comic books, baseball cards, stuff like that. So
you
my
raised an
toy collection was
interesting-
kind of going on.
You raise an interesting point, because that is something I think that's remained, is collecting. Like it used to be, let's call it baseball cards and Magic the Gathering cards back then, and now it's Pokemon cards and Funko Pops, right? But
Yeah, totally.
the spirit of that is still alive, even though the subject matter has changed an awful lot. So I think that's one thing that definitely has remained, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and I come from the era of the toys that I really wanted, like, and I was an action figure kid, so it was probably going to be pretty action figure heavy because Furbies weren't really there yet. By the time they became popular, I was focused on other things at that point. But you had Thundercats, you had G.I. Joe, you had He-Man, you had Transformers, Voltron, the obvious Star Wars action figures, and, Mask, and a couple of the Sectars and a couple of the other ones. And so and they were all basically based on cartoons. Almost all of them, not all of them, but almost all of them had a cartoon attributed to whatever the action figure. But even on the, on the girl side, they had, Rainbow Bright, My Little Pony, all of those things. And those were mid to late 80s. But if you get into the 90s, you start getting into the Nickelodeon era toys.
Totally. That's my jam, dude. Ninja Turtles, Pogs. Like, we had big Ziploc bags full of Pogs.
Which were
hacky sacks
literally
and
just
stuff.
discs of cardboard with different images on them. And there, you had to, like, I don't think anyone truly knew how to play Pogs. It was just whatever rule set your group of friends made up
This is
for
what
Pogs.
defined house rules. Yeah, it was different for every player. Some people thought you got to keep them. Some said it was double or nothing. I think it was supposed to be a trading collection deal, because you had the slammers you had to slap down, and whichever way the Pogs landed, but even those rules changed. Yeah, it was pandemonium. It was conflict management at a young age, is what Pogs
those
taught
could be
us.
played inside or outside. Out on the concrete, you could play Pogs. On the schoolyard, outside of your house, but you could also play them inside.
I think it was supposed to be the natural evolution of jacks, where you had like you had to like bounce the ball and scoop jacks, or bounce the ball and spin the jacks, kind of thing. And I haven't seen a set of those or a barrel of monkeys in decades. So
yeah. But you're right. They had outdoor toys in the 90s, like Skip-Its.
Yep.
And stuff like that were designed to play outdoors. I don't know if they actually, outside of like electric scooters now, really design anything to be really played outdoors, because there isn't a market for it anymore. There's actually, but to be fair, the 90s are what brought us into the digital, like with the Tamagotchis and stuff like that.
I think
started.
they still sell Nerf guns, but other than that,
dude. Yeah, Nerf guns. What's funny now is that all Nerf gun arenas are all indoors.
Are they
all
really?
indoors.
That's sad.
Yeah. So
I know paintball's going that way as well, which was I loved playing paintball. That was my favorite. But
yep.
I had to buy a bunch of hand-me-down used gears and stuff. What was my favorite toy of that era?
Man, some of these were dangerous. Like,
oh my god, lawn darts.
Do you remember well, they had the ones where you strap your feet into like the basically springboards.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the jump shoes or moon shoes.
Yeah, dude, there was all sorts of crazy stuff that happened in the 90s, and they were pushing everything, but from all ages, like super soakers. We love super soakers. Like the water gun market is basically dead now.
Yeah.
And that's sad to me. Like, remember, water fights were so much fun as kids. We're getting your group of friends, another group of friends, and you just creamed each other, like just shot the crap out of each other with like, and they just made them almost fire hose level, and they were just sonically ridiculous, where like it almost made a noise as it hit you and left blisters. Awesome, good times.
It was a good time. Like we had, I think they were called water weenies. It was basically like a long flexible tube with a pin in the end of it with a clamp.
Yeah.
And you release, it was like a medical clamp, and you could like hide them in your sleeves and shoot people with water weenies and stuff like that.
Those are great.
Dude,
those are great.
The 90s kicked ass.
Dude, their board games were better.
Yeah.
Like, think about the board games in the 90s. They went out of their way to make all of the board games wacky and zany. You also not only had the board games, but remember those handheld, you got one game on it and it was a black and white screen, and it was like soccer or football or whatever. You had those. Like, you had to use more of your brain and more of your imagination to create fun with these things, and they were designed to pull that out.
Well, I think board games got really dynamic in the 90s too. Like, I don't recall exact release dates here because Operation's been around for a million years, but like Hungry Hippos and Mousetrap and all that shit, I remember those being advertised in the 90s anyway. But you had to figure out mild physics to get some of these games to work. Like build strategies around that to beat your friends.
Perfection was another one.
Yeah.
There was a lot of those type of kind of like really engaging games, you know. So not only did they have outdoor toys that were far more in the creative realm and kept you outside doing outside stuff, but they also had indoor games that were also far more creative. And but their board games were a lot more creative. And oh man, I'm just like scrolling through memories right now, just looking at these things going, oh dude, I remember those, you know. And I think that the toy industry has now shifted entirely.
Yeah.
I think that toys are now more for the suspended maturity adults, basically. And I'll admit, I was gonna say, you know, anybody knows me, I had a giant toy collection.
It's like you're treading on fighting words now.
Right? But here's the deal. I think they've recognized that the people who loved toys grew up.
Yeah.
And so they stopped really making toys for kids, and they made VR units for kids so they could play online. And now all of the physical toys and the action figures, they're like, well, we got to make them better because they're adults now, so they recognize quality. But I think that the whole market has shifted to millennial generation because they're the collectors, they're the nostalgia keepers, they're the ones who are looking back on these going, I remember this, I want it, I couldn't afford it when I was a kid. I had a whole basement full of, my mom couldn't afford that when I was a kid.
Guilty.
I can now, and now I'm going to put it in there.
I watched a video where like some parents sat their son and daughter down and they were like, describe what this sound is, and they played them the dial-up internet sound, and they're like, I don't know, and they're like, describe this sound, and it was a fax machine, and they're like, no, is that like a siren that goes off in town when a storm is coming or something? They're like, what is this? And handed them a compact disc, and they're staring at it like, is this like some sort of old movie? Like they sat them down with like a Discman, and they were like monkeys hammering on it, like what, trying to figure out how to open it, and it was great. I was like, I'm old now. So I remember all that shit, including the cassette tape.
So as I was prepping for this show,
Yeah.
I just Googled 90s toys to kind of give me a refresher, right?
Sure.
And for a compare and contrast, I put up another Google search of toys from 2025.
Sure.
And I was astonished to first go down it, and it's not, there isn't really anything at all. Like, I'm going down and there's just like weird, like little shaped Japanese, like
Yeah,
animal
they have
things.
one that's an AI powered robot called a Cosmo, or talking plushies that respond to voice commands, kind of thing. They have
Yeah.
smart toys that can recognize faces, express emotions, and learn routines and stuff like that, which is
But
the
really
same
all I'm
thing, but
getting
like
is-
way elevated in evolution above the Tamagotchis beeping at you to feed it or make sure it doesn't
Right.
shit itself to death. It's like the same
But
thing.
I'm not really even right, and I'm not seeing anything outside of what, like, if there's actual toys being shown here, they're actually just either remakes of 90s toys
Right.
or nothing. Like, I can't even, there's nothing really in here at all that's actually a toy.
Yeah.
It's
I
actually
rest my
just
case because that's when all the imagination toys died, and all the digital shit is now just different.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't even imagine what it's like to run Toys for Tots these days. Like, how is that even happening?
Great question.
You know, but yeah, there's most toys now are geared towards adults because kids do not have interest in them. They want to plug them in front of an iPad or put on a VR thing or, you know, put them in front of an Xbox or whatever the case may be, but their brains no longer function on a plane with storytelling,
Right.
like dolls or storytelling action figures, or playing in the dirt, or building a sandcastle, or building tunnels for your GI Joe Jeeps to go into, or creating scenarios, like even down to Cowboys and Indians. Like, they don't even understand how to do that.
I was about
If you
to say,
give them those toys,
do you
they
think
don't know what to do with them.
do you think a bunch of I don't know, Gen Z or whatever the generation is after that, kids slightly younger than your kids, let's say,
Alpha, yeah.
Alpha, do you think that's not even close on definition? Do you think that they would be able to manage a D&D campaign?
No.
Or would the attention span be so thin that you're like, I have to talk and roll a dice to fit, like, for the probability of this is stupid. Scroll, because the raw attention span doesn't exist now, or like I don't think
Well,
they could either, but I don't know why. It'd be a fun test study, but like, have fun.
I'm
Here's how
kinda
you play the
curious.
game. I don't think they
Because
would.
there is a surge in popularity, but I'm trying to think of what the demographic is, and it's typically like millennials and younger that have like resurged
Yeah.
the tabletop gaming kind of stuff going on. But I don't know if there's a heavy level of Gen Z or Gen Alpha coming in on that at all. Yeah, most
Well,
D&D
even-
groups that I can think of, even like the popular ones on the internet, are all
Our age.
full-grown adults,
Yeah.
our age, right? So
Yeah,
like,
I don't think. I mean, even tabletop games are different. Like, it's read and react almost always. Like the rules may differ slightly in the presentation or the delivery, but they're quintessentially the same thing. Like Cards Against Humanity,
yeah,
it's built something funny and likely highly inappropriate, and someone picks the funniest excerpt that they had to read based on everyone's cards they played. Read and react, read and react. That's tabletop gaming now. I haven't seen anyone break out into a Vampire the Masquerade campaign or a Dungeons and Dragons campaign in 20 years.
I've got groups around here that still do it,
Yeah.
but
all,
they're
all our age, right?
all our age,
Yeah.
yeah, or slightly younger, you know, but not cresting in the teens or anything. Like,
That might be
all of
that might be a fun
Oliver-
experiment. Is like, go to where Friday Night Magic is hosted and just walk in the door and look around, take a mental note and leave, just to stop in and be like, how many Magic players are here tonight for a card draft that are less than 25 years old?
Right.
0, 1. Like,
Well, that being said, Oliver just the other night surprised me because apparently him and his friends decided to start a D&D campaign. And he built a character, but they're doing it via Skype.
sure. Yeah.
So the whole, because some of them, they all
It's a
live in different
storytelling
areas of the
game.
county.
Yeah, that works.
Yeah. And so, but what's, I think the contributing factor to that is they're homeschool kids. And homeschool kids are known for not having TVs in their house, not allowing tons and tons of screen time, being way more outside kids, being encouraged to use their imagination far more frequently, if not on a multi-daily, on a daily basis, multiple times a day. They are heavy readers. They are, they part of their curriculum and part of their lifestyle is that they read all the classics, and they're forced into using critical thought and imagination and all that. So I think if there is any resurgence of tabletop gaming and imagination in children in general, it is literally going to come out of the ever-growing and rapidly growing homeschool population.
The homeschoolers and the Amish kids, huh?
They're gonna be the ones to
imaginative play in the future generation starts at home with D&D. Tell them to put a webcam on that dice roll so they believe he rolled a natural 20. Otherwise, no one's going to buy it, and that Skype shit will fall apart. So,
well, I think they have a digital roller.
Oh, that's the best. Yeah.
Yeah, so that they can all just click on it.
Click on it, and it randomizes. Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's incredible. That's great.
So, yeah. So I was pretty surprised because he was mocking up a character, and then him and his buddies, and some of them live one of them lives on the East Coast, and these are most of them are local kids that he knows, and so but yeah, it's pretty incredible. So I was like, all right, yeah, good for you, do that. So I don't know.
I think
that
thought it'd be a fun compare and contrast tonight because I haven't looked.
It is.
I haven't looked that far back into childhood in a long time.
Dude, I am Captain Nostalgia. Like I literally live and breathe nostalgia. Like if somebody brings me a tattoo of a toy that they loved when they were a kid, like a Polly Pocket, I'm like, hell yeah, let's do a Polly Pocket tattoo, which I've done. Yeah. And so, I'm all about it. I still have a bunch of toys in my station, as most tattooers do.
I have an apprentice that will crimp your hair right now as you're getting the Polly Pocket tattoo.
That's right.
Someone get me a scrunchie. It's on.
So, but yeah, like the 90s, I think was a flashpoint of
it's where things started to pivot for sure.
They really did, because if you think about eras and decades, and you think about, if I said early 50s, instantly your mind goes to be, like the bebop era of the poodle skirts and the that era of the 50s people are
finally coming up for air post depression and speakeasies and all that stuff.
In the late 50s, early 60s, there's a distinct era there as well, where you're starting to see an explosion of different kind of like odd colors, like burnt oranges and paisley and certain things coming in, like the olive green refrigerators and all that stuff. But there was still kind of the remnants of the 50s still in there, the classic look of that, and the cars were still the same. And then the late 60s, you start getting into the hippie beatnik era, and then in the 70s, you start getting into, you're coming out of that era. You can kind of track as you go. The 80s, if I said early 80s, you got an idea of what it looked like.
Some stuff happened, and then the 90s,
and then the mid, like even you can segment the early 80s, which were at the tail end of the 70s, where there was still like afros and disco was still a thing, into the mid 80s, which was neon Back to the Future, and the Goonies. And then you go into later on in the 80s, and you've got 87 to 89, and there's a lot of day glow, there's a lot of neon stuff, but there's a lot of sleekness kind of coming in, and a lot of hip hop coming in.
It's very much the style of our Our
Right.
podcast aesthetic is that era. Yes.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So then you get into, 99, and there was something that happened in 99, but think about how to distinctly separate the decades of the 2000s. You could literally pull someone out of 2005, pretty much drop them in today, and not really be able to tell. Where if you took a 20-year
Yeah.
gap from 1960 to 1980, there's definitely,
Big time. Yeah. I think there's a handful of hallmarks like music preferences and different things like that, but the waters get murkier and murkier as time goes on. Yeah.
yeah. So definitely, if you look at like 2015 to now, that's a decade.
Mm-hmm.
You would not be able to tell the difference between somebody from 2015 standing in the room with you today. And there is no distinctive stylistic wavering. There is no like music distinction between those two. You can listen to something from 2015 and not recognize that was like, think about in the 80s, we were listening to stuff from the 60s, and that was the oldies.
Yeah.
And stuff in the 90s is now oldies. But like,
There's a lot of
that means Nirvana is the oldest.
Yeah, there's a lot of homogeneity in pop culture that just kind of bleeds into the same.
But
subject
now,
and
in order to
predicate
make things
over the last 10 to 20 years now, yeah.
And the only way to actually distinctly manifest yourself any differently within that kind of sea of normality is to literally draw from the 80s and make your aesthetic 80s, or draw from the 70s and make your aesthetic 70s. And 90s now. 90s now fall into that category where you can draw from it and actually give yourself a 90s aesthetic. And
Nirvana,
that's very
Stone Temple Pilots, Nine Inch Nails, like all of the.
and that's very
grunge-era
odd
stuff.
to me.
Yeah,
We've lost an identity decade to decade that we used to be so distinct to each one of those decades, and now it's completely kind of a gray area, and we're actually having to borrow, which is why everything on TV is nostalgia based now. What's the biggest show? Stranger Things. All of that stuff is, you have to draw from those eras in order for it to actually have any impact on our psyche and on the societal psyche, because if you don't do it, it's hard to implement. It's hard to make a space for it in a brain when everything is exactly the same for 15 years.
and I may have talked about this on earlier pods, but like an adjacent thought that's linear to your line of thought there is, defining each culture, each generation by the culture, particularly in young men, of what they have to revolt against, because everybody had fight the man moment. For you and I, it was, mine took a little bit of a different turn, but it was definitely the punk rock era. And are you
For sure.
SLC punk is like the most vivid retelling of that story from our generation in pop culture, right? But at the same time, what do these generations have to revolt against that makes them earmarked for back in my day, right? It's each other is kind of where it's going, and that's really, really sick if you follow that through to conclusion. But yeah, I've always thought about that because, the 50s was like the breakout from the Depression and the exploration. The 60s was like,
World War
heading
II.
into space boom and all that stuff, plus hippie culture, Vietnam, 70s, drugs and, sort of the disco era. 80s was kind of all cocaine and Wall Street in a lot of ways, had a big influence on a ton of that generation. 90s was very grunge, and had some revolt against whatever the big picture norm was in all the pop culture.
Gangster rap too.
Gangster rap was massive.
And grunge. Yeah.
East Coast, West Coast stuff. And then, like even sports fandom has changed, but like past that, like what is the next generation going to identify themselves? Like that's a conversation I've been exploring for a couple of years now and stuff. And it's very related to what you're describing in, the general cultural point of view.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's interesting, but yeah, I think there's so much sameness now, to your point. It is very, very hard to tell generational gaps apart decade to decade or even further. So Yeah.
So you did ask
Mhm.
what my favorite toy was, and,
Yeah.
and unfortunately, I think mine is not from the '90s. I think it's from the mid to late '80s. It's from a TV show called Mask, and hold on. Yeah, here we go. So mine was there was a TV show called Mask, and it was basically like these essentially super cops that all had there was a contingent of bad guys that were trying to do bad guy stuff. And Mask was like a law enforcement agency of like special operative guys,
Sure.
but they all had like a vehicle that turned into another vehicle. So like the car turned into, the wings came out and it turned into a jet.
Nice.
There was all sorts of different types of vehicles that turned into different types of vehicles. And my favorite was this super bright green motorcycle that turned into a helicopter, and it was called Condor. And it came with the guy, and the point of the term mask is each guy had their outfit and a helmet or a mask that went on. And so the Condor was hold on was Oh, this took me into a weird spot. Okay. So anyway, but the Condor was piloted by a guy in a yellow suit and stuff. And man, it just looks so cool. And not only, and I've got a long story about honesty when I was 7 years old and I got this that comes with this, but it applied later on in my life where the core memory of that toy and what it meant to me, and that it not only taught me a lesson in honesty, but it taught my mother that she would know that I would never lie, that I would never lie to her. I would never lie to anybody, that I was going to be truly honest for the rest of my life. And she encouraged that. And so, later on, many years down the road, and I won't kind of go into the details of it, but I ended up finding 3 of them on the internet, and one for me and one for my mom as a reminder. And I bought her that toy, and she keeps it on her shelf in her living room. It stands out entirely because it does not match her decor, but she keeps it there. And I have one in my station at my work, and then I gave one to my wife as a kind of a token of honesty. Like, I'm going to be honest with you forever, and this is what that means. But it held such a place in my head and my heart that it reminded me of that, but it was just really cool toy as well. And I just thought that the design of it was really, really neat. And I mean, outside of Star Wars toys, which was kind of my jam, and I had a ton of those. I had a lot of He-Man. I had a lot of G.I. Joe. But all the big stuff, like the play sets and the equipment and the vehicles and the machines, all the extra expensive stuff, my brothers and I never really got because my parents were too poor to afford the cool big stuff. So we got the little things, and they made do. But my second favorite probably is the original full-size metal Voltron.
Nice.
With the Lions, and that was, I think, 84. But I dreamed and dreamed and dreamed of having this Voltron, and I would play out back with my imagination in my grandparents' backyard with sticks, pretending I had that Voltron. Before my mom then married my stepdad and actually could afford the real Voltron that Christmas, and I was blown away. And so, man, I cherished that thing. There's a time frame where I actually wanted to get Voltron tattooed on my stomach in like gangster lettering, like the words "long suffering" over the top of it. But those days are long gone. I'm not getting that done. That was
passing thought. I mean, you nailed
So,
it with mine.
what about you?
You nailed it with mine. It's the Nickelodeon era Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle toys. Like, name one.
Yeah.
It was my favorite. I didn't have very many of them. The ones I did have were like worth their weight in gold. I played with them everywhere. They lived in my backpack when I went to school. They came out of my backpack at school. They went back into my backpack when I got yelled at for having them out at school. There was one that it was like a plastic van, the pizza van.
Oh
And it
yeah.
had like a pop-off sunroof, and you could mount turtles in there, and they could fight crime from somehow on the ceiling of the van, moving at high speeds. But it was the best. So that van, and I never got the big Technodrome. It was like, I don't know, both a little bit bigger than a basketball. But yeah, one day I'll have the Technodrome. But that was it. I think those were my absolute favorite. Those are what I had all the time, and love them to death. But yeah, carried a lot of having to be imaginative and playing a lot alone, like functioning a lot by yourself with your imagination. So that's kind of how that went.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, having grown up in the woods like I did, like sure we had toys, but we were also like three brothers and a much younger little sister that lived without neighbors in the middle of the woods. And so like we had to use a lot of imagination. There's a lot of tree forts out there where we grew up. There's a lot of
buried treasure in various spots.
Oh yeah, like obstacle courses we'd made, and all sorts of outdoor stuff, because indoors was boring. And like, so outdoors was the only way to do that. So, but yeah, I think we are in a place where hopefully we start recognizing societally and through the education system and through the workforce that, oops, we made a big error with allowing these people or allowing our children to just be plugged in constantly. And now they are basically robots without any imagination, and we're not creating anything anymore. As a society, creation is gone because these people don't have imagination anymore. And hopefully we course correct, and hopefully we unplug all these children, throw them outside, let them play with their brains, encourage them to do so, and then what will end up happening is hopefully we'll have a renaissance, if you will, of a society where the people actually know how to use their brains instead of being told what to by a program.
A Voltronissance, if you will.
A Voltronissance.
Oh man. Well, we got some movie reviews for y'all. Don't think we forgot about you.
That's right.
I have to talk about Night Teeth. Night Teeth is a movie you can find on Netflix. And big spoilers, this came out a couple of years ago. It stars one of the guys from the Game of Thrones, the guy that I think he ends up getting castrated or something in the show. Reek, something like that. I don't remember what they called him.
Oh yeah.
So he's a guy in there. There's one scene in there that has Megan Fox and Sydney Sweeney in it, and they're in the movie for 3 minutes maybe. And basically the story is we're following a kid that's freshman year of college, maybe something like that, still trying to find his way between being a kid and being an adult. Lives at home with grandma and a half brother. And long story short, the older half brother is like a vampire hunter or something. He like represents the line of humans that you don't cross between these borders, that they secretly made a pact that vampires could have this area and everyone else could be everywhere else. And all the traditional vampire lore, no one thinks they're real or isn't supposed to know. And if they cross a line, then a war breaks out. So he's off doing this. And he's also somehow like an Uber Black driver, like an Escalade guy that you could rent and drive you around to parties and stuff. So the younger half brother sweet talks him because he's busy one night into letting him take a shift so he could bomb around in this cool Escalade and ends up picking up these two vampire girls that ask him to go all over these parties. We learn that they're out killing all the other mob boss members of Vampire High Society, so this main character guy from Game of Thrones can take over and be the new master and commander of all things vampire. It's so dog shit. Like, this movie is so bad, and it's very, like, parts of it could have been really cool, and the cinematography is really well done. They shot it really beautifully, but it's like very CW show, where it has to be like the tween romance
Like
that breaks out between this young driver and one of the vampire girls.
It's like a side quest story of like Vampire Diaries or something like that.
Feels that way, and I've never watched the Vampire Diaries, but I'm gonna say yes. And it just was bad. And to debut our new Meg rating system, I'm giving this 3.5 megs, but the tail end of the meg, so just the back half. It's 3.5 megs, and I do not recommend you watch this unless you have nothing better to do, or you're cooking dinner and you want some cool explosions and one or two cool fight scenes on in the background. It's disappointing. I would watch Blade. So 3.5 megs for Night Teeth for me. I don't know if you've seen this movie or not. It's kind of a waste. It's a fun waste of time. I'll give it that, but it's a waste of time.
All right. Well, typically I watch anything vampire related
Yeah.
or anything like that, as everyone knows, in October.
Mm-hmm.
So, oh, dude, that I just saw the Megs pop up on the screen. That's so great. That's so great. So, I've been looking forward to that.
I can't get them.
yeah.
I can't get them horizontally cut. I've tried 100 times. So that is the tail end of the Meg, because it's sort of his back. The toothy end shows more of his face, but it's leaning more toward a 3 megger.
Got it. That
10
looks
megs
great.
looks fun because it just blows up across the screen, but we haven't had a 10 megger yet.
Well, yeah. So I don't know. I think I'll probably avoid this one in particular, because although I do like kind of a horror comedy combo, if it's done right, but if it's kind of geared towards like a 22-year-old girl,
There's
it loses
nothing
me.
scary about this at all. Now, there's a movie with Jamie Foxx called Night Shift, I think, where
Yeah.
there's some jump scary parts. And this has none of that. It's just baring of teeth and flirtatiousness. And
The Night Shift was like maybe 6.5 megs for me, and it was okay.
it was okay.
There was some good parts to it, but overall the whole story felt kind of boring,
really
and
thin. Yeah.
yeah, really thin. Like, kind of, they just wanted to piece together this to put these actors together and make something for Netflix. But yeah, it was a real shallow film.
Yeah.
But this one feels even further down the line of that. Like, there's just no real true substance to it. And
So, like, when there was a show on CW, I think I watched it on re-aired on some other streamer, and it came out, and it was about the Archie comics. It was Archie and Jughead, and it's called Riverdale.
oh yeah,
And I was like, oh, this is going to be so sick. They made a live action Archie. And like 30 minutes in, an eyebrow goes up, and I'm like, wait a minute. Is this one of those like CW tween heartthrob bullshit drama shit? By episode 2, I was like, yes, it is. This is so sad.
Right. Yeah.
This movie is a lot of that kind of.
okay.
It tries to be like
side-
the adult version of it, but it's not at all.
Side note: the
Yeah.
cast from that Riverdale show came into the Seattle shop one night and tried to pull like, can we get in before all of them were celebrities card?
Yeah.
And we said no.
Yeah.
We're like, no, you got to wait. And so they're like, but, and we're like, no, you have to wait. These people are here first. They have appointments. They're getting tattooed. Go get a drink or go get food and then come back. And they actually did. They came back, and they were kind of dickish, but but the crew from that show came in. It was like right after their first season, and so. But yeah, they came in and got tattooed at the Seattle shop. But
No.
well, that's a shame. Was that the only thing you watched this week?
No.
That was
but it's the only thing that I'm prepared to like
Review.
I'm like halfway through some episodic documentaries that I think are kind of cool that are mostly sports related, and I watched a couple of like older movies that are like classic movies kind of for like 90s and 2000s, and I'm going to see The Accountant 2 when it comes out.
Oh, yeah.
I'll be in Seattle though. So I rewatched the first one. I still love that movie.
But that actually comes on fairly frequently in our at our house because we really loved the first one.
Yep. So I'm hoping the second one kicks ass. But yeah, I've got a few more in the pipeline for next week, I think. So yeah.
All right. Well, I am actually reviewing a show this week.
Yeah.
And the show is because I've been a big fan of the Black Mirror series. Hit or miss, like overall, for an anthology series. It's kind of the gold standard of these kind of anthology series that some of them pop up on Amazon and other things. But Netflix kind of started this kind of dark anthology resurgence that we have seen. They're on season 7 of Black Mirror. And Black Mirror, for those who don't know, Black Mirror is a show about, and they're anthology shorts. So by short, it's about each episode is roughly an hour. So it's not necessarily like a 15-minute one like some of the animated ones are, which are great, but you're going to get anywhere from 45 minutes to 90 minutes per episode.
I was going to say, speaking of dark anthology, do you know if Netflix canceled the Sandman, or if they were going to continue to do more of that? Because it feels like it's been a couple of years now, and I had some gripes and grievances with some of the content, but by and large, it was a phenomenally beautiful show to watch and really fun to follow. I watched it. Yeah.
I don't know. We'll have to look into that because
anyway.
So there's been a pretty heavy complaint. You know, the first couple of seasons were absolutely brilliant, and for each season, you get probably 5 to 10 episodes per season, and it kind of varies from season to season, but the first 2-3 seasons were really strong, and you would get one kind of bummer episode out of them, or whatever. But as it went on, it started getting kind of less and less kind of punchy. And the premise of the show is basically a dark tale. It doesn't necessarily have to be horror, but it is dark in nature. And some of them are horror, but it's definitely not a happy or friendly kind of storytelling. And that being said, it's also always built around some type of future tech. And that's kind of the point of it, is that it is some type of advanced technology that hasn't quite gotten into our society yet, but we're on the verge of it, or close to, or has been talked about, and the pitfalls of those technologies and how they're going to affect humankind. And I think it's honestly, from a conspiratorial tinfoil hat kind of thing, I think it's conditioning. I think it's a conditioning show to kind of test the waters to see how people would feel about certain type of texts that are about to come out, and kind of give them worst case scenarios and let oversell it, so that when it comes in, it's like, oh, but that was sci-fi. This isn't real, or the reality of it isn't as bad. And kind of that type of conditioning. But each season kind of gets a little bit more woke, and a little bit more woke, and a little bit more woke, and kind of just runs out of good ideas. And they're trying to be too in the weeds with certain things. This season was okay. The first one, Common People, and they've been getting really good stars to cast in these now, which is kind of the fun of it. Originally, it was basically a bunch of British actors, and with the popularity of the show, they've actually gotten some pretty high-level talent. And I'm not going to go over any of the talent.
What are you rating this season as you describe it here? How many megs you got going on for this season?
for this season, I'm going to go with a solid, just an even 5 megs, because there was a couple of gems in this season, and then most of it were kind of boring duds. So the first episode, Common People, kind of tackles the medical industry and subscription stuff. So basically, lady gets her brain, she's in a coma, and to bring her back, there's this agency now that is basically a service that downloads the damaged portion of your brain. They can scan it and then actually put it on their cloud server, and then just turn on their cloud server and have the implant actually just reconnect, so that way the damaged part isn't doing the work, their cloud server is. But then all of a sudden she starts getting ads, and then you have to subscribe and upgrade, and the packages are more and more expensive, and they're this working class family that just can't afford it, and it's just eating them alive. In the meantime, there's also the concept of basically online degradation sites where people pay you to do horrible things, and kind of not sexual but could be kind of stuff. And the husband is starting to do these things in order to afford his wife's payments for her subscriptions, or she's going to have ads all the time, or sleep too long, or whatever. Oh, sorry, that's just a new subscription. So that one was actually pretty good. I actually very much enjoyed that one, even though it was an indictment on the medical system in the United States, which whatever. But anyway,
part of that ethos that you just described is explored quite deeply in another Netflix show called Altered Carbon, and there's 2 seasons of that, and it's very good. I don't know if you've watched that at all, but
I watched the first season. I hadn't gotten around to the second season yet, but I loved the first season. Second
one lacks the throughput of the single storyline beginning to end. It jumps around a lot, and it gets a little weird, but it's very good and very visually appealing. Also, Sandman second and final season should be appearing in late 2025, the internet says.
Oh, excellent.
So there you go.
All right. Season 2 or episode 2 was Berenore, which is about a whiz kid at a food testing facility and making recipes and such. And a girl shows up and gets a job there that is an old high school nerdy rival, and she was a computer whiz, and she has the ability to alter and change time to mess with people who picked on her in high school. It was okay. It was actually kind of clever, and the ending was super great, and I thought it was well wrapped up. Took a little long to get there, so it was kind of boring to get there. Hotel Riviere is a noir one where modern filmmakers have found a way to inject through AI, putting current stars into like old movies that are kind of from old production houses that were like from the 30s and 40s, and insert them into the structure of the movie via probes and such, right? Well, then they do this for
complicated holodeck from Star Trek.
Essentially, yeah. And they put this star into one of these movies because she's kind of in a career crisis of her own. She's a big star, but she's like, I just want to do something important, kind of thing. So they put her in this, and it gets buggy and glitchy, and they find out, oh, you don't actually know how to play the piano. That's going to set the whole movie in a different direction. We got to, and she gets stuck there and falls in love with the main girl, right? And
your phone. Holy cow.
Oh, I know, dude. I know. There's a fight going on Telegram right now.
Is that what that is?
Yeah, everyone's fighting. I was like, I've been watching the names pop up.
Like, you have so many more friends that are reaching out to you than I've got. That's more notifications than people I've met in my life.
I was keeping it up because I could see the YouTube feed there.
No, it's hilarious. I just heard the vibrations. I was like, "What is something on fire?"
Yeah. But this one was really boring, and it took a long time. And of course, it was the original actress was actually a lesbian, and the whole romance is lesbian, and it's
Sure.
like, okay, but it was like really force fed. It was really ham fisted. It didn't feel natural, and the main actress sucked. She was like, I think she's a stand up comedian.
Oh no.
Like that they kind of are trying to give her acting chops, and she was terrible. But
Sag.
I don't even know who she is, but
Fortune
like I was
Feimster?
basing this just no, it's a big, tall, like I think like 6'2". She looked like a basketball lady, like black lady that they injected into like a 1930s film
Yeah.
as the male guy for the love interest.
I see.
And like, oh yeah, that was gonna work.
Tig Notaro is a very good sci-fi actor for a lesbian comic, but I think she's the only one that's actually been captivating and entertaining.
Yeah.
Because she's just very, I hate everyone, and that's kind of what she gets typecast as. But she's brilliant at it.
One of the shining gems in this series was episode 4, and it was the Peter Capaldi played the main character as like this long-haired like guy with headphones, and he gets caught stealing booze, but he did it on purpose, and he gets arrested, and they're like, we found his DNA match. They did a DNA swab test right on him right there, which was kind of the tech that they were talking about, but it was also this other tech that basically he's being interrogated and telling the story of his childhood, and
The cops
his
just
early
bought his
career.
data from 23andMe, so
Right, yeah. But he is suspected of a murder that he's linked through DNA to, but he was a video game writer from the 90s, and he got brought into this genius guy's like new game process, which was an AI thing early on.
Sure.
And it was like Lemmings, but they all learned from you. They could see you through the screen, and they all learned language. And then he starts taking all this acid from a buddy and starts to understand them, and they're telling him the message, and he keeps them safe for years. But the buddy was the drug dealer that ends up coming in and like killing them all.
Yeah.
And so, but the message is the point.
it's
And
really
it was actually
just The
really
Sims in real life.
basically, yeah, but it's an absolutely brilliant episode, and the ending was really cool. So that was a shining one. There's a really kind of touching one that was the most emotional one, and it was Eulogy. And this one actually had what's his name? He's the main guy in Lady in the Water, and
I like this guy.
Paul Giamatti.
Paul Giamatti. Yep.
Yeah, so Paul Giamatti's the main guy in this one, and he's an isolated man living by himself in kind of what looks to be an older house, and he's got, his wooden desks all over the place and such. And he gets a phone call from a company that says, "Hey, do you know this lady?" And he's like, "Yeah," and he's obviously upset by this. Her daughter wanted us to contact you to see if you wanted to be part of the service. She passed away, and we have a service that we send you a package. You put the little thing on your head, and you have memories that is part of the eulogy program.
Right.
Good memories of her, right? And you go through this story, like the package shows up and it talks to him, like there's a voice on the other end, and he puts it on, and basically it allows him to like look at pictures and kind of go in like a memory, and see if they want to collect that data for the overall project. But as you go through the story, he had dated this girl and he was totally in love with her back in the 90s, and as he goes through the story, you can feel the hurt and the pain, and you find out through the course of the story of he might have been a little bit more at fault than he realized for their inevitable breakup and her moving on. And there's some pretty cool revelations, but the acting obviously from Paul Giamatti was on point. Like
Nice.
if he doesn't get some type of award nod for his performance in this, I'd be surprised. And then the last one for the season, because there was only 6 episodes this season, was sequel to the USS Callister from the previous season, where a video game company that has an open air or open world engine that has it's kind of Star Trek based, and the creator has made clones of people who work within the video game development groups. That he's a weird guy, and he like makes digital genetic real clones that are in the game, and they're not players, but he can control them, and so that he can live in there, and he's the captain. They find out that he's evil, and so a whole bunch of stuff. And this is a sequel to that episode, and it's really well done. And so as an accompaniment to the original episode and how this one was tied into it, and the comedic factor and the storytelling, it was phenomenal. So there was some highlights, but the other ones were so boring that it just made it kind of but yeah, I would say an even 5 for this season. It did not spark anything that was just like, wow.
Yeah.
Outside of a couple of highlights, this, the purpose of Black Mirror is to kind of shake you a little bit and make you feel weird for a day and kind of go, oh, I didn't like how I felt from that. And that's kind of the point of Black Mirror. And I didn't really get anything from like that from this season. Especially coming off the first episode was such a shock from the first season that it set the tone and the bar really high. And so if anyone knows what I'm talking about, they'll comment. But if you don't, I don't recommend watching that first episode first. You'll never watch Black Mirror again. And it has everything to do with a politician being forced on camera to have relations with a pig, and it is and he's cornered into this decision. He has no choice or people will die. And it's shocking.
Yet another concept explored by the gentleman.
Yeah. So five mechs.
All 5 of them up there. Even 5. I got to keep polishing this rating system. That's awesome. I'll close down the Megs so that I don't scare the audience any longer. Well, we've got the Gospel by Gen Z, at least for a little while longer. You ready for this?
Oh, I'm always ready for the word.
So the photo
all of its
here,
varieties.
The photo here is Bartolome Esteban Murillo, Christ healing the paralytic at the pool of Bethesda here. Bethesda something. Very pretty.
Bethesda, yeah.
Yeah, Bethesda. Yeah, I got that right.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah, you did.
Paralyzed Friend, chapter 39. Divine Bro was cooking, and it was so fire that the house was packed, even out to the door. 4 real ones pulled up, and they brought their nerfed friend, for he could not walk and needed Jesus to drop an update. The chat was so full they couldn't get near Sacred Blood, but they never said back down, never what? Never give up. So they installed a free skylight in the place and brought the nerfed bro down through it, and gently yeeted him to the ground in front of Holy Bro. When he saw that they carried, he told the nerfed bro, "My son, your L's are forgiven." Now some of the unholy Karens thought to themselves, "We caught him in 4K blaspheming. Who could forgive L's but the divine G alone?" Jesus knew that they thought this and said, "Not that I need to flex, but that you may know God has mods." Then he turned to the man and said, "Go forth and skirt." And the man did the Juby slide all the way home, and the nerfed bro was unnerfed, and the Karens were unnerfed, and the whole chat was served that day. And that's chapter 39. Paralyzed.
Oh,
yeah.
man, it's beautiful. That was beautiful.
I don't know who I'm going to give this book to when I'm done, but I feel like this is a gift that must continue. So write us modernrelicspodcast@gmail.com. Let me know who should be a good recipient of this. Maybe it's a white elephant gift or something someday. But we're getting toward the end. We got about quarter of the book left to go, it looks like. But I know a lot of that's glossary back there. So we got some more content coming your way after this is done, I think. So
Yes.
you got anything else this week, my man? I know you're coming down, right? That's
I am.
coming up soon. Is
Yes,
that next
yes.
week or the week after?
It's Tuesday the 22nd. So
Next week. Exactly.
yep. Yeah. So Easter is Sunday,
Yeah.
and then that Tuesday is when I'll be down there and be over at Mad Monk Tattoo at the Meadows Mall,
Nice.
and I will be there. And I still have a couple of spots open if anybody's interested. If you're in the Vegas or Henderson area, or even down like in the Havasu area, there's that in any surrounding area. But
If you're
I'm
in the
there, I've got a
United
few spots
States
available.
and near an airport, even,
Yeah.
just come down.
Yeah, come down. You can enjoy Vegas, get a tattoo on your way out, and make everybody happy. Everybody will be happy. So, but yeah, I actually will be down there on Tuesday, hopefully early enough for us to do a pod when I land, and then when we take off, I take off that Tuesday too, then the following Tuesday. But
Nice.
then from there, I think I'm just home for a while, which will be nice.
Yeah.
So, but I'm gonna just spend a lot of time on the back deck, grilling and smoking meat. So,
Yeah. Probably be doing the same
Well-
thing here.
Yep.
Well,
All right.
awesome,
well, that's
dude.
it for me.
That's it for me too. I hope everyone has an awesome week. We will talk to you very soon. For Lucky I'm Angel, have a good night.